This is the first tutorial from a series of short tutorials about socket programming made easy. If you know how to write into a file, then you will know how to write to another computer in the internet using sockets. If you want to access a file on the hard drive, you need a file descriptor or file ID. The system call open will obtain the file ID associated to our file. Once we have that file ID, we can easily read from the file or write into it. A socket can be viewed as a shared file between two computers. Both of them need to get the ID of the file/socket. This is done using the socket system call. There are two types of internet sockets, TCP and UDP. TCP sockets maintain a permanent connection like a call between two mobile phones. UDP sockets are connectionless, like when you send text messages from one phone to another. UDP sockets are easier to create. On the server side, we obtain the socket ID using the socket system call. Then, we need to bind the socket ID to an IP address of the computer, or we can bind to all of them. We also need to reserve a port number for communication. Ports below 1024 can only be reserved by the super user. The client needs to know the IP and port numbers. If binding was successful, we are ready to receive messages, using req from which will wait until a client sends a message. Meanwhile, the client obtains its own socket ID. It does not need to reserve an IP or a port number, the operating system will take care of that. Knowing the remote IP and port number, the client can send a message using CentOS system call. Then it can choose to wait a response from server. TCP sockets are slightly more complicated because need to maintain a permanent connection. On the server side, we obtain the socket ID using the socket system call. Then, we need to bind the socket ID to an IP address of the computer and to reserve a port number for communication. The listen system call creates a queue for incoming connection, then accept will wait for a client to connect. Meanwhile, the client obtains its own socket ID, and will initiate the connection using the connect system call. Upon a successful connection, the peers can exchange data as streams of bytes.